Hello, and welcome. I want to start with a question that, in my opinion, is the most relevant to our modern lives. Have you ever felt lost? Not in the sense of not knowing where you are, but lost in the sense of not knowing where to go. Have you ever felt like your life is an endless race, where you run and run but never get anywhere? Is your mind a whirlwind of thoughts, notifications, and information, and at the end of the day, you feel exhausted but empty? The truth is, we live in a world of noise, a world of distractions we consume. Social media, constant news, the pressure to be productive, the need to always be connected. All of this creates a kind of desert, an arid place where we wander aimlessly, consuming content, but creating nothing that truly matters. We are drowning in information and dying of thirst for purpose. But what if I told you there's a story, a 40-year journey through a literal desert that serves as a spiritual map to guide us through this desert of distractions in our lives? What if this story taught us how to find our way, how to hear God's voice amidst the chaos, and how to walk toward a greater purpose? Today, we're going to delve into the story of Moses, but not in the way you've heard it before. I want us to see the story as a guide to finding our way in a world of noise and distractions so that finally, and once and for all, we can find our promised land. Moses' journey begins not in the desert, but in Egypt, an Egypt of oppression and suffering. The people of Israel were enslaved by a cruel Pharaoh who saw them as a threat. They worked building cities under the scorching sun, suffering at the hands of cruel taskmasters. The cries and cries of the people of Israel rose to God. They were a people without hope, a people who no longer knew what freedom was. But while his people were Sophia, Moses was in a completely different situation. He was a Hebrew by birth, but raised in the wealth and luxury of Pharaoh's palace. He was an Egyptian prince, educated in the wisdom of the time, surrounded by private identities, but also by division. He was a man who belonged neither to one world nor the other. He was a man without a home, without a clear purpose. He lived for 40 years as a prince, and then, after killing an Egyptian defending a Hebrew, he fled. And he fled into the desert. He became a shepherd in Midian, living a quiet and secluded life, and he lived there for another 40 years. A prince, a Hebrew, now a shepherd, lost in the middle of nowhere. And I ask you, isn't this so familiar? We often live lives of Egypt, where we are slaves to our own anxieties, our attachments, our distractions, and we often escape to our own private desert, where we isolate ourselves, lose ourselves in our purposeless lives, doing things that don't fulfill us. And it is in this desert, in the middle of nowhere, that the story of Moses truly begins. Moses was tending his sheep, going about his daily life, when suddenly, in the middle of a seemingly empty place, he saw something extraordinary. A bush burning with flames, but not consumed. It was the desert. It was routine, but something was different. And herein lies the first lesson. In the middle of the desert, amid distractions, God always tries to get our attention. But often, we are so busy, so lost in our own noise, that we fail to notice the burning bush. Moses, however, stopped. He turned to look, and the voice of God, a voice he had never heard before, echoed from the bush, "Moses, Moses, take the declaration from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." God was calling him to a mission, the mission to free his people. And Moses' response is undoubtedly one of the most human in the entire Bible. He didn't say, "Yes, Lord, I'm ready." He felt totally inadequate. He made excuses. He asked, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? What if they don't believe me? I'm not a good speaker." He was paralyzed by fear, insecurity, and doubt. And God didn't rebuke him. God assured him. God reminded him that strength doesn't come from him, but from God. "I will be with you," God said. "I have put the words in your mouth." And here we understand a truth we need to internalize. God doesn't choose the capable. He empowers the chosen. Your inadequacy is not a problem for God. In fact, your weakness is the place where God's power can manifest most brilliantly. And so, Moses, a man who fled Egypt, returned to Egypt. But this time, he was not alone. He was with God. He and his brother Aaron faced the most powerful man in the world, Pharaoh, and challenged the liberation of the people of Israel. And Pharaoh, in his arrogance, endured. And the Bible tells us in epic detail the 10 correct answers. Each plague was a demonstration of God's power over the gods of Egypt. The water turned to blood. The earth swarmed with frogs. Darkness covered the land. It was a supernatural battle, a clash of wills. The message was clear. God is greater than anything, any power, any distraction that keeps us in captivity. And at the last and most terrible plague, the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh finally relented. The people of Israel, after centuries of slavery, were free, and they set out on their journey. But what did they take with them? They took their memories, their habits, their slave mentality. They took their fear. And Pharaoh, in his madness, regretted his decision and pursued them with his chariots and horsemen. The people of Israel found themselves in a desperate situation. On one side, the Red Sea, on the other, Pharaoh's army. And they, once again, despaired and blamed Moses. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die here in the desert?" This is a powerful image for us. Often we make the decision to follow God, to leave our Egypt of distractions and addictions, but soon find ourselves in a difficult situation. And the first thing we do is turn back. We regret having made the decision to change. Our Red Sea becomes an insurmountable barrier, and our Pharaoh of fear and doubt haunt us. But it was in this moment of desperation that God acted. He instructed Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea, and the sea parted, and they crossed on dry land. And Pharaoh and his army were swallowed by the waters. They were free. But the journey wasn't over. They weren't in the desert, and the desert is a place of training. It's a place where there are no shortcuts. It's a place where God teaches us to depend on Him. And the people of Israel complained. They complained about the lack of water, the lack of food, the monotony. They even longed to return to Egypt, to slavery, because there at least they had food and security. And here is a vital lesson for us. You can't take Egypt to your promised land. You can't come out of a place of distraction and oppression and expect your old habits, like your old minds, to serve your new path with God. Liberation is the beginning, not the end, and the desert, however difficult, is where God shapes and prepares us. And not in a desert, God provided for them. He envied the manna from heaven, a bread that appeared every day, and He gave water from the rock. God supplied all their needs, not their desires, but their wants. And here we understand that in our desert of distractions, God provides what we need. He gives us what is essential for our spiritual survival, not what distracts us. And it was in the midst of this desert, on Mount Sinai, that God gave Moses His word, the 10 Commandments. It was a map, a clear guide for a lost people. It was a GPS to the promised land that would help them live a life of purpose, order, and courage in a world of chaos. The story of Moses teaches us that God calls us in the midst of our distraction, that He frees us from our Egypt of oppression and guides us through the desert to train us, that He provides us with what we need for a journey, and that His word is our guide, our compass. And if this story resonated with you today, I invite you to do something. Identify your Egypt. What enslaves you? What distractions are keeping you from finding your purpose? Share your story in the comments below. Your story could be the inspiration someone needs to begin their journey. And if you want more stories like this that guide your faith and give you courage, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. In our next video, we'll explore Abraham's faith, trusting God when the journey is long. Thank you for being here with me. May Moses' lesson inspire you to find your way and have the courage to follow God's voice amidst all the noise. Until next time.